Hello, welcome to episode number 5 of Self Improvement and Spirituality in Practice, Blooming with Greicy Hoo. Today, I'm going to talk about some words you should avoid using. And why? Because these words can put you down without you noticing. Greicy here. I've been a therapist for 18 years, an astrologer with 33 years of studies already, and I'm also an independent spiritualist from Brazil. My proposal is to help you deal better with yourself, with others, and with life. Because everything has a why, a what for, and a how. Do you want to understand certain situations and change your reality for better? Yes, you do. Want to evolve as a human being? So stay here and let's have a conversation. There are some words that we are so used to hear and use that we don't realize the emotional baggage they can have behind them. Like they can really put us down or put other people down in a very unconscious way because the meaning they have and the way we are so used to use them. So the first one I consider that is not really useful is the word problem. And even worse if you use it with another one which is big. So if you say this is a big problem, oh, then is of course the problem which was already something difficult, like a big wall in front of you. When you say big problem, it seems to be much more hard to face. So it's the same when you hear someone else using this word. Oh, I have a problem, I have such a big problem. So it seems much harder to solve the thing they have to deal with. So it's like a trigger for us to react, like expecting the worst, like if the situation is even worse than it really is. Also, if you consider something as a problem, your inner unconscious reaction tends to be to feel impotent and or powerless to deal with that, or not so confident, not so able to overcome what is in front of you. So instead of using the word problem, I prefer to use the word challenge or even issue. A few time ago, a friend of mine said to me, oh, I started to have breathing problems. And I suggested to him, what if you change the word problem for issue? You started to have issue. Wouldn't that feel lighter? Wouldn't that feel not so hard or even more comfortable to you? And he said, that's it. He realized that only one word was already making a difference to him in terms of the way he was facing that situation. That's another thing I use, another word, situation. So I can have, I don't have problems in my life. I don't have a problem because I don't use this word. I avoid to use this word. So I prefer to see things in a different way, because if you change your point of view, you can change the whole way you deal with someone or in a specific situation. So I prefer to see as me having not a problem but a challenge in my life. And I like challenge because it brings strength out of me. And or challenge, or I just use the word I have an issue, I have a question to solve, something like this. Another word I avoid is error or wrong, because for you to use the word wrong, you must know what is right, right? So I also consider we never make mistakes in terms of error because people are basically moved by vanity. So no one makes mistakes on purpose, right? If you do something considered wrong, it's not because you wanted to, it's because you still don't know how to do it right or how to do it in order to get a good result that you want. So making mistakes basically is part of the process of learning. Actually, it's inevitable and natural and acceptable. Like when you are just learning something new in your life, a skill or a sport or taking classes, or even if you are, when we were young, you were learning how to write, how to speak, and everything. We so basically you are not making mistake. You are just trying, making attempts to do it the way you think you should to get the result you are expected to have, to achieve. And another thing to consider is the way you treat yourself, the words, because the words have not only a weight, but they have power, right? So the way you treat yourself, the way you talk to yourself inside your mind, is the same way you will treat other people. And that's the opposite also. The way you treat other people reflects the way you treat yourself. So, being careful about words we use can change not only the way we see things, situations, and other people, and the way we deal with them, but also the way they will react to us. So, imagine this: you have someone, a coworker or an employee or whatever, a relative, a brother or a son, and you say to them, "Oh, you did this wrong. This is wrong. This is not right." But it's implicit that you are condemning them with this idea of an error. But if you change the word and just see it as much more as an attempt to do it right, like saying something like this: "Oh, this is not the best way to do this. Let's try another way." Or maybe you could try to do it different, or let's make another attempt because this was not exactly the way it could be better. Something like that. Like, it's really about being gentle, not only with other people, but as I said, the way you treat other people, you treat yourself, and with yourself, you are much worse, actually. So the other people in our life are just a training for us. Two words that I avoid. One is difficult and the other is complicated. They are very similar actually. But if you see something as, "Oh, this is difficult," or even worse with some drama, "This is too difficult," or if you see it, "Oh, this is too much complicated," you already react powerlessly. You already consider, if you see something difficult or complicated, it's very unconsciously and instinctively you react as someone powerless or impotent or incapable of solving that situation or dealing with it, right? So instead of using difficult or complicated, I prefer to use challenging. So for me, nothing is difficult. It can be challenging because I don't know yet how to deal with that situation or how to solve an issue in my life. But it's not difficult because I don't want myself to feel bad about something or incapable of doing something in a situation. So it can be, instead of difficult, I prefer to consider it challenging. And instead of considering something complicated, I prefer to consider it complex. Complex means it has a lot of aspects to consider, or a lot of aspects to learn in order to master something. But it doesn't complex. It's not necessarily complicated. Complicated. It's a way to see it as like it's too much for someone to understand, or to learn, or to deal with. So it really, those other two words, difficult and complicated, that I believe if you use them, they tend to put you down. It's not that the words put you down, they itself don't do anything actually, but it's the power that you project in those words. And we are so used in our society to see those words associated with having like more like a negative point of view, that they instantly works like triggers to bring some impotence out of us. Another word I avoid is defect or flaw. For me, there are no defects because I prefer to use weakness or weak point. From my point of view, what people consider a defect is just a potential strongness or strong point or skill or ability or a good quality. It's just that raw behavior, let's put it like this. It's like a raw behavior that you didn't work enough to get the best out of it. For example, if someone calls you stubborn, it's, that word is considered to be to reflect a bad behavior, right? But the people who call you stubborn are the exact people that can control you, right? So realize this. If someone calls you, oh, you are too stubborn, is because you are acting in a way which is not convenient to them. You are not doing what they want you to do to please them. So, because if you are insisting, the principle is the same, insisting on doing something or behaving in some way, right? So, if you're insisting on doing something that is not uncomfortable to them, or it doesn't matter to them actually, though they can actually consider you as someone who is persistent, someone who has a strong will, someone who has, who has a discipline to pursue your goals. So they won't call you stubborn in a bad way, really trying to put you down. And it's the same. It's actually the difference here is if you are doing something that is convenient to them or not. So that's why I don't consider that someone has defects or flaws. Someone can not know how to do better, or how to do better in a certain situation, for example, but they can always learn. So it's actually a weakness or a weak point, not actually a flaw, a defect. Because if you see as a defect, it doesn't matter if it is something in yourself or other people. Unconsciously, you consider yourself or others as they have something wrong. Again, a word that I avoid, wrong. That they are not good enough, they are not perfect, so they don't worth much, they are not so good. It's a way to really consider yourself or someone else as inferior, actually. So it's a kind of bullying. When you point in someone what you consider a defect, or in yourself, even worse, doing auto bullying. And it's really a way to criticize. It doesn't have a good connotation, those words, and we know that, right? So I avoid. Another word is guilt or blame or fault. if you say to yourself, if you have a very demanding voice in your head, always saying that you were guilty of doing something that didn't went right, or you blame yourself, or you use this word to, oh, I'll blame someone for doing this to me, or like if you were a victim, and always the word victim actually is associated to someone who is impotent, right, powerless. Or if you say to you, this is my fault, well, you are considering yourself wrong. Or if you say this is someone's fault, for example, these words, guilt, blame, or fault, they come with a deeper meaning associated with punishment. Because of our Western society, and especially because of the impressions that religions put in our minds through centuries. If someone is considered guilt, so it is expected that this person will suffer or a punishment or a pain, or have to pay for their mistake, for what they're sin, in order to be forgiven. So basically, if you consider yourself guilt of anything, it's like a trigger in your mind, unconscious mind, asking for punishment, a kind of punishment. So the more you feel guilt about something, the more you feel bad about yourself, especially if you hurt someone very dear, for example. The bigger the punishment, the harder the punishment you will need unconsciously to feel better with yourself again. It's like committing a crime, so you have long and hard sentences to pay your debt, something like that. So it's the same if you consider someone guilty of something. If you say like, oh, this is your fault, the other person instinctively, and this is a very unconscious process, will react expecting a punishment. So they will be defensive, or they may even start to be aggressive in order to defend themselves. So I consider it's interesting to change the word guilt for responsibility. It's a much more mature way to see things and to deal with things. It completely changes the point of view and the reactions, right? So if you have like a coworker or a son or someone who you, instead of consider them because they did something that caused some damage in some way, it doesn't matter how big, and if you say like, well, who is responsible for this? It sounds much better than who is guilty of this, whose fault is this. So you see, if the same, if someone treats you this way, if you did this, I'll blame you for this, or it's your fault. If someone comes to you and say, well, this is you were responsible for this, you see, there's not such a hard emotional thing behind those words. So here is my suggestion: try to change these words by another words and see the results. If you will change the way you treat yourself and other people, and also the way other people will react to you in a much better way. So recap the words I talked about here. Problem, try to change it to challenge or issue or question. I have a question, I have an issue, I have a situation, I have a challenge in my life. I don't have any problem. Try to change the error, the concept of making an error by just an attempt to do it right, or just another try. Try to change in your vocabulary the words difficult for challenging and complicate for complex. Try to change defect and flaw for weakness or a weak point or maybe an inability, and try to change guilt, blame, and fault for responsibility. And there's another word that I avoid, which I think it's already so much misunderstood, which is God, because God can be very related to not only a good being, but also a punisher, like someone who is watching everything, he knows everything, and if you don't behave right, they can, punish you for not being a good kid, for example. So that's, in my opinion, is a it's not a very mature way to see the higher spirituality. So instead of using the word God, and also because God has very different meanings to people today, right? Every religion, every person can see God in their own way, which can be very punishing. So I prefer to use like higher intelligence or the universe or just the word life, but the life with a big L, like meaning a big intelligence, a force that created everything. So that's my suggestion to you today. You can participate in the podcast by sending a voice message through the link in my Instagram bio, which is at Greicy Hoo, GreicyHoo. Yes, your audio up to 1 minute can appear here in a future episode, as if you were in a radio program. Or you can reach me on Instagram or DM me a comment, a question, or a suggestion. If you liked this podcast, subscribe on your favorite platform to receive new episodes, or follow me on Instagram to find out when there will be a new one on the air. Stay well, and we'll talk again in the next episode.